We are here in downtown Concord, North Carolina, which looks completely different than it did when I first moved down here in 2010. Tell us about some of the things that are happening here in downtown Concord.
Well, over the last few years, downtown Concord underwent a major revitalization. So, if you can imagine, this whole entire strip of Union Street was closed off due to construction, and that was all to provide a little bit more of a walkable space. As
Hmm.
you can see now, which you probably didn't see before, is there's a lot more outdoor seating. It's been, a little back and forth on how folks feel about the parking because there's no longer street parking.
Right.
However, they've made parking convenient on both sides. We have a lot more businesses that have come and restored a lot of the buildings here and moved in and opened up shop for visitors. But that's been the major piece of the revitalization in neighboring counties as well. We've taken I guess, a token out of their book as well, and how they've restored their downtown, and that's a little bit of what Concord is doing today.
Yeah. So I've always thought that the arts, as well as local businesses, kind of revitalize "quote unquote" dead zones in small towns, specifically, here in the South. How well has this been received by the locals, as well as individuals that are coming, outside of Cabarrus County? Because, like we're seeing back there, May 29th, you all had Reese Palmer who was here, and I follow her on social media, so shout out Reese Palmer. You all are really being pretty eclectic with programming as well as events here in downtown. So how has it been received by the locals?
I would say that's been received pretty well, in my opinion. Even those who might have had a difference of opinion during the process, once they've been able to get out here and experience some of the events and eat at some of the eateries and, go to some of the local shops and experience events like the Arts Council, which we share
Right.
space with in the historic courthouse, the Art Walk. It's been a lot more open, and I would say that it's been well received
Uh,
from what I can see.
so the courthouse, so this is the historic courthouse that we're looking at right here, but this is the
Yes.
new one?
This is the new one
Okay, so right
that's on the
behind it.
backside, yes.
Okay, got you.
But this is the historic 1876 courthouse. We are 150 years this year. So we've been ramping up, trying to gain a little bit more events for that. We're reopening our history room within the courthouse. And the first exhibition will focus on the historic clock,
Okay.
which has been an 8-year project
Yeah, we saw that the
in the
other day.
making. Yeah. 8 years in the making, just due to pauses with COVID and materials and things of such. But that'll be our reopen to the public. The Arts Council, again, has done amazing things with this space, and so we're grateful that we'll get the benefit of some of their foot traffic to come and see what we're working on, as well as Meadow View that we'll talk about soon when we go
Yeah.
on site.
So before we do go to Meadow View, and Brother Eric is going to hook us up with that information, can we walk over to the walkway that's here that has some of the signage of
Sure.
Cabarrus County history? I think that'd be helpful to give individuals a depiction of the timeline of what transpired here. Do we know when this was erected, when that archway was put up, and all the information, the panels?
Right off the bat, I do not have that year, but I can definitely go and fill that gap in.
Okay. So as you all see, there's some apartments that are being built here. Restaurants are coming up. I like coming out here because there's a coffee shop that's right up the street that I go to, which is called, what is it called?
Preston Porter.
Preston Porter, which is good. Good customer service. But when I started coming down here more often, I saw this right here, the Union Market passageway. And I think this is really dope to have, especially with so much growth that's happening in communities. It's always good to have some type of reference from a historical standpoint where individuals can understand the history of the town. You know what I'm saying? So let's give a shout out real quick to the artist, which is Sharon Dowell. Okay. So tell us about this walkway and why it is important for individuals to come and check this out as it relates to history lovers or even non-history lovers.
Well, if you can see here, there is a homage to Red Hill Tavern, which is also largely connected to the project that we are doing. Red Hill Tavern was a plantation, but it also served as a tavern and inn for folks that were traveling along the Great Wagon Road, famously known in the county for where President George Washington spent overnight during his southern tour.
Okay.
And so, when you find historic towns, especially colonial periods, they often have walkways of such. And it's really just a telling of the time. And it kind of centralizes what the everyday life of folks look like for them, in their day-to-day travel. What I will say about the people of Concord is that they are very much so invested in personal history.
That's good.
As well as the history of their homes and some of the buildings. Very often I run into natives and even locals that have been here for quite some time in the area. They're very much so passionate about the history of the city of Concord.
Yeah.
So. One of the things that is striking about Barber Scotia is also that we have an esteemed alum before it took its major form, but Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune graced the halls of Barber Scotia College. And that's amazing to have someone so monumental come through Cabarrus County. And, I don't know if it's as widely known, but she started her education. And, who's to even say that maybe what was poured into her at Barber Scotia inspired her to grow even more and move, to Washington, D.C. and further open up Bethune-Cookman College,
Yep.
Her
Which I
roots,
graduated from.
Yeah, so, who knows? Barber Scotia could have been the archway for her to propel forward in that. Barber Scotia is also it's had its share of ups and downs over the years, but they are working to revitalize in their own way they're reopened. As we mentioned, Eric is teaching African American history there. President Chris Ray is doing a great deal of fundraising on behalf of the university, and he's moving forward. He has a vision, and he's propelling forward with it, and we're trying to get as much community support around him, and he has the backing of his neighbors. So
that's good. All right, folks, still here in Cabarrus County in Concord, just at a different location. The remains of the school, which are these the original remains of the school?
Yes.
They're right here. And please tell us why it is in this container.
Ashley Setlett-Probst, who held my seat previously, along with a board member, Alex Porter, they were invited to look at another historic site, and Meadow View happened to be there, and curiosity just went down the rabbit hole upon research, and in that historic preservation and advocacy, they were looking for a home for it, and all parts of the school that were salvaged from that particular day are in here. What can be salvaged in this project, we aren't entirely too sure, but the goal is to use a good percentage of it. And so it sits here safely next to the site in which it will be reconstructed.
Okay, so this space right here is where it's going to be reconstructed.
And right
is that strategic? Because I see there's a greenway right there.
Yeah, so a part of the development with our partnership with Niblock Homes, he also donated a great deal of land to the city of Concord, their parks and recs, because there's also tons of history, which we'll talk about as we walk in this area. And so these two spaces, a board member from our organization advocated for parking spaces for a few bus stops so that, field trips eventually would come into fruition among tourism as well. But that was the idea in this space as well, to make it inviting. It is amid a development, but that also makes it pretty cool to see that life is happening around. But what's very unique about this particular project is that there will be over a century's worth of history on display. You often see placards, and you might read a little bit of research on particular areas of your respective city, but actually being able to see over 100 years of history in front of you is what makes this very unique, very walkable at that.
Okay.
I'll share a little bit more once we get a little closer.
Right. We definitely burning some calories out here in this Carolina heat. Now, I like to see that it's trimmed down because, when you come to cemeteries in places like this, if it's not taken care of, the little slithery things are out and about.
Well, they
The chiggers, the ticks,
yes.
and all the other things that we got to worry about down south.
Which is why I'm in pants and thick socks today. But the Sons of the American Revolution, they often come through the cemetery and provide cleanup.
Okay.
We'll cut through here.
Okay. Shout out to them.
They were out here not too long ago.
Okay.
And so there is some upkeep.
Good. So I was asking Eric earlier, I see Pfeiffer Cemetery, and of course we have Pfeiffer College that's not too terribly far from here. Do you know if there's a connection?
I do not. That question has been posed before, but I haven't been able to close in on whether or not there's a connection there.
Okay.
I will say not unlikely.
Yeah.
The Pfeiffer family are one of the original families of Concord before Concord was Concord. I'll point to this. We are moving forward with our project. Goodness.
Yeah. See y'all? You hit that age, you get that heat.
Yeah,
it comes out for
It
sure.
hit me, and it's extremely humid. There was a project a few years ago, sponsored and funded by the Cannon Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
There was some ground penetrating radar that was able to go throughout that project for this particular gravesite. And so what you'll see here, that's what they were able to locate among some of the names.
And this was in 2020 when this transpired, it looks like, right?
Yes.
Okay. You'll see right there, thank you to the Cannon Foundation, which is a huge name out here in this specific area, as well as Kannapolis.
Yeah, and this right here provides a great deal for our project moving forward. As you can see, there are also unmarked graves outside of the cemetery. They were originally labeled with a few flags. There are still some, if you see that one right there.
Yep, I do.
Which is something that we are hoping to investigate as well throughout our project. And I'll take you inside so that you can see.
So my question is, and typically we see this, where you have the inside, which is you know, bricked or stoned up and everything, and then you have the outside. And we know that that could be two different things, right? It's up for interpretation depending on which cemetery you go to, whether it's something that's 100% factual or not. But the graves that are outside of it, are we thinking that those were potentially enslaved humans?
Yes.
Okay.
We do believe that they could potentially be the remains of the enslaved.
Okay.
And we're hoping to find out a little bit more about that in this project. Because for me, you know, that kind of represents, you know, trial and triumph once Meadow View is in full shape. You know, from enslaved to receiving an education, you know, that story alone is inspiring for me. And so, like I mentioned, the Pfeiffer family is one of the original families within Concord in the county. And you can see some of their headstones around here. I'll take you to the back. Another piece of history that is also said to believe by local historians, once we kind of pair maps, please watch your step as well. The Great Wagon Road is believed to run on this side, which used to be the front of the cemetery.
Okay.
Over here. And for those who aren't familiar with the Great Wagon Road, that was a big form of migration, you know, settlers, the enslaved, ministries, merchants. They traveled up and down the Great Wagon Road, spanning from Pennsylvania and through North Carolina. And I believe it did carry a little further south than North Carolina as well. But when we pair maps, it looks as though traces are on this side of the cemetery, which is another piece of history worth preserving and sharing with the full spectrum of Meadow View. So we have, you know, these folks lived through the American Revolution, you know, as well.
So can you tell us, how did the name Meadow View come about? Is that a you question or is that an Eric question?
No, Meadow View, so the original owner of the house, upon finding it, goodness, her name is leaving me. I'm gonna say Bobby Cannon Motley. Her father had purchased the school originally for storage, and she said, well, the name of the school was Meadow View. And the original site of the school was located not too far from here. And when you look, there is a meadow in view, and perhaps that is the actual tie to the name. Have not been able to confirm that, but we at least know that it was called Meadow View. And then through research and finding that it was not a Rosenwald school, because originally thought to be a Rosenwald school,
Right.
strikingly similar in its infrastructure, we saw that Meadow View was actually listed. So that confirmed at least that, okay, this was the actual school. We know that it was here,
For sure.
that it was moved, and that we can move forward in research using the name Meadow View.
And you said that it was roughly around the 1890s
Yes.
when you first were able to identify documentation about Meadow View.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this project also predates my time with my organization. However, I was too excited to get my hands on it with the assistance of our board member, Alex Porter. And so, yeah, the Meadow View is not a Rosenwald school. It probably would have helped us a little bit more with tracking. I know that my predecessor, she looked at Fisk through their archives
yeah.
of Rosenwald. You know, it's every so often you'll get an article your way about updates on a repository of surviving schools, and so we have not seen that here in Cabarrus County, and so that's why it was said to be the last standing before it was deconstructed.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you see the sign here, you can also see that there is a trace of where it's thought to believe the Great Wagon Road, which is on the other side of the rocks.
1755 through 1792. That's what's up. A lot of folks from different backgrounds and everything traveled right through here. And so we're saying that it went right here outside.
Yeah, there
of
are remnants. And even once you go up Lucky Drive, where it merges with Eva, there are said to be remnants over there as well. So there are many parts to the project that we are looking to investigate a little bit more.
Okay, good stuff. So now we're gonna switch the mic off. Brother Eric, it's your time, brother. It's your time. So let's kind of start with, how did you become involved in this project?
I think I was just looking, worked at Barber Scotia, as faculty, volunteer faculty, whatever you want to call it. And I was looking to the history of the area. So I happened to come across the historic Cabarrus Association. So I was looking at what was going on, what they were doing. And I said, I've always wanted to be a part of anything that's African American history, because it's my passion. It's been my passion since, I don't even know. I don't even know when, man.
That long?
Yeah,
That's a good thing.
very, 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 very long.
For sure.
It's been a while. But in any case, I wanted to be involved in the interpretation part of the Meadow View School. Mm-hmm. In particular, I've gone to places, museums. I've been to a lot of museums, and I've seen that the interpretation or the telling of the history or the story of African Americans was not told truthfully or in full. Okay. So I reached out to Dr. Bodrick, and I was, let me help you out with the interpretation. Make sure, because if you have a new structure, a new site, it's gonna need a story, right? So help them out with the research. I used to work at Rosedale doing the same thing, researching some of the enslaved there, and also actually building on my own research for myself, trying to create a curriculum or something that I could teach docents with. So if everybody's been to a museum and have talked to a docent or been on a tour and felt, I don't think I'm really getting, I know me personally, I don't think I'm really getting everything I need to get out of this tour, For example, I went to, not gonna say the specific names, went to a museum and they said, yeah, they were servants. I've heard the word servant used instead of enslaved. If you're taking my autonomy, you're taking my humanity, you're not treating me well. And I don't care if you organized by the church or you let me live outside of the city or wherever. I'm still enslaved. I still don't have autonomy of my body. Okay, so going back to Meadow View, I wanted the stories to be told in full for purposes of educating the public, educating the people that do want to learn about it, and also honoring our ancestors. So those are some huge things that I and our organization are trying to fulfill. Currently, right now, we've written. How about what have we finished the two of the panels? So we finished the panels so far.
For the interpretation piece, as Eric mentioned, you want to make sure that you're empowering people to tell the story.
Right.
How you communicate the story can be shifted, but not the actual story itself, which is very important. So all the characters at play, just really empowering docents about the education behind Meadowview, the story of Meadowview, enslaved in general, because that's just a part of American history that we cannot bypass, especially in telling the full spectrum of all the history that will be on display here. We can't skip out on that part. So it'll be a traveling exhibit for right now, just sharing the story of Meadowview and hoping that we also are gaining access to oral history, potential oral histories as well. But in totality, the interpretation is very important for this part. Black history in general in Cabarrus County is very important. There are pieces of history that are still being preserved. There's adaptive reuse going on with the mill, Coleman Mill, as well.
Actually,
And so,
past that, didn't we come in here?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think this will all play a part with one another in telling the full story of Black history also in Cabarrus County, in well, this particular part of Cabarrus County, and could connect to other parts as well.
So, for individuals for viewers who have no earthly idea about Cabarrus County or Meadowview, give us the short about what Meadowview is from an educational standpoint and how important was it during that time period, coming right out of the institution of enslavement.
And I could pass it back.
For sure.
For me, as far as the education part, it tells a story of resilience, community coming together. It gives that community story because, of course, Meadowview was fully resourced by the community, built by the community, and for the community.
Right.
So those are things that are very important when you're talking about the community as a whole, bringing people together, being inclusive, And it tells the story of how African Americans were able to move through these things that were going on during the Jim Crow era, segregation, all that stuff, and still was able to educate themselves when they were not allowed, in a big scheme of things, to even to know how to read. So to learn how to read. So that, I think that right there is a great story within themselves. The resilience, community building, being resourceful. A lot of people that built the school had skill sets, and it's kind of going against the logic that African Americans did not have these skill sets or the formerly enslaved, because in the late 1800s, a lot of those people were the sons, the granddaughters, of the enslaved people, that had been emancipated. So you're looking at that, so you can connect that with also the educational history, what did they learn in the school building? That would be a part of my interpretation. What are the things that they learned in school? What was a typical day like?
Right.
Because we always talk about the Rosenwald schools,
Right.
and how they were, funded. You know what I'm saying? But not talking about the resiliency of the church, and then also church history, religious history. The churches really funded these schools. Help the schools come together. So, because Meadowview wasn't the only school. This is about 11 more schools.
Yeah, that were associated with the AME Church.
So all associated with the AME Church, and so that foundation of could be a part of religious studies.
Sure.
So there's many different avenues that you can go down when you're studying this history.
We know that Meadowview probably closed around the 1940s, and was a part of 3 waves of merging into Shankletown, which is another big piece, large part of Black history in Concord.
Okay.
Meadowview was in the first phase of that. Shankletown has a wealth of history, and it also connects to the bigger picture of Black education in the county as well. Previously, we talked about Barber Scotia. Um, these schools were centered in these communities. Not so much today, rezoning, but these communities still meet. They're very passionate about their history. They meet once a month, not only to love on each other, but also to share what kind of resources they need. And I think that the foundation of which Meadow View was built traveled just like all of the other rural schools that were in the county during that time, focusing on Black education.
Yeah. What was the original site for the school?
About 2 or 3 miles maybe away from here, off of Poplar Tent.
Okay.
Woods, ain't it?
It's the land is clear. So
Okay.
essentially, since the school was deconstructed, nothing has gone on at that property. It was purchased for commercial. Um, it was purchased for commercial property, but they have yet to start digging on it.
Okay.
And so we're hoping that we'll gain permission to dig on that land, to see if there are any pieces of life, connected to Meadow View on that site.
Okay.
So we're not able to go on the property, but you can see it in your bypass.
Okay. So for some clarity, as it relates to this Pfeiffer Cemetery and the connection, can you tie that in one more time for us?
So the Pfeiffer family, one of the original families of Concord, they were here prior to the establishment of Concord. Meadowview was a few miles away, down the street. Rock Hill Road, which might possibly be connected to Meadowview as well.
Okay.
And we know that because we do know of two principals that were at Meadowview.
Wow.
And one might have attended that church and might be buried there. We're still in the development stage and research part. But the portion of which connects the Pfeiffer Family Cemetery, it's really just the enslaved.
Okay.
We don't know if these might be ancestors of those who might have matriculated
For sure.
not too far away from here. Could be a connection there that we find out eventually when we do a digger deep dive into the unmarked enslaved that are here on the grounds.
And there's headstones that are,
There's one flag left. You might
Yeah,
see
there's
stencils
a
here,
flag
but there
that's
were a
right
few
there.
over here.
yeah. And then obviously up and down here, and there's some periwinkle that's all throughout here as well.
Yeah, you can see the indent.
Yep.
I think I'm standing in one right now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're here.
Yeah, the indentions of where the graves are.
So clearly we are standing in a graveyard right now for the formerly enslaved humans, and even on the ground you can kind of feel the depressions in the ground or what have you. And so, what is the plan to honor these folks? We see that the Pfeiffer family over there, they're encapsulated by the stone wall or what have you. But what's the plan for these folks?
It is our hope that we'll be able to bring some type of recognition to them through labeling and providing paneling, and also, maybe creating a pathway from Middleview that'll also be on the other side for folks to come and pay their respects as well to the enslaved over here. So signage, pathway, and speaking about them, and through interpretation, that this was their ancestry, and they were able to gain the resources despite all odds to educate themselves. And we see the fruits of their labor on display. Though there might not be any blood connection, the fruits of their labor, the backs of their labor, will be on display. Generations later, they were able to educate themselves. So really just acknowledging them, that they are here, because not many folks know that they are actually here.
Now, and I've been to a couple of places here in Concord, and I don't really see anything as it relates to the institution of enslavement, as far as signage and things like that. And I may be wrong, but would this be somewhat the first of its kind, or am I missing a location?
Not that I am aware of. It could be. That's something that I will have to investigate a little bit more. But having more signage for Black history in the county is definitely is an open market for increased visibility.
For sure.
And so this is going back to my purpose, and my goal is to make the enslaved people, give them a story, give them a name, humanize them. Because some people just say, oh, they're which is wrong, the wrong thing to say, slaves, you know, but these were people, you know, that had lives and, you know, they had people, they were in love, they, you know, they cried, you know what I'm saying? Things, you know, things that we do daily, these people did as well.
Sure.
And so it's more than just giving them the history, but letting people know, letting the public know that these people were here and they existed outside of just knowing this graveyard. You know, that history is valuable, but this is also valuable at the same time.
Yeah, and it tells a fuller story.
Right.
That's
It
for
tells
sure.
the full story, not just a one-sided thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Descendants. If we are saying that this school closed in 1940, my grandmother was born in 1935. We got some folks that are still around that's been born in the early 1930s, of course. Any oral histories that we think we can get out of these
Potentially.
spots?
So we know the principal was Lucille White Bost. Bost, also a very common name within Cabarrus County.
B-O-S-T?
Yes.
Okay.
And we've been able to locate one of her daughters, who unfortunately had no clue about her mother's time with Meadow View.
Really? Is she local?
No, she's in Virginia.
Okay.
I believe she's in Hampton. Yeah, I want to say she's in Hampton, but she was unfamiliar with that. Based on research, I know that there was a pause, and maybe she took some years off, you know, to tend to her children, and the school then merged into Shankletown.
Okay.
And going to the church, I have met a few of her students that were in first grade. She made a career of being a first grade teacher.
Yeah.
They attended the church, but they were her pupils at Shankletown and not at Meadow View.
Okay.
So we could possibly tell about her story and her style of teaching.
Yeah. And pictures.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, how it mimicked in Meadow View.
Yeah.
But we have not been able to find anyone that could really speak to Meadow View specifically.
Okay.
And we're hoping that through Community Ask that we'll be able to find a little bit more about folks who know something about Meadow View and its mention, because we know it existed.
Sure.
We know it's true. But that's where we are right now.
And as she said, that connection, acquiring that, that's another community piece. So acquiring that community connection is very important. So I think we were going to do like a community meet, like you said, having something where anybody from the Cabarrus County can come in and maybe kind of elicit, if they have some stories or some pictures or something like that, or, you know, it's probably going to be elderly people. What if they have like something where they have some type of artifact they could provide, you know, something like that, anything that we could use that's in connection with the Meadow View School. So that's a part of that community buy-in that we're talking about.
For sure. And how far down does this go, you all? Do we know?
You said how far?
Yeah, as far as where the graves are.
I want to say to Midway. There weren't none at the very far end that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'm not entirely too sure from the Cannon Foundation when they were doing that project how far they were able to go. But let's check on the signage.
But they're kind of spread all over because there's some grounding ditches over here.
Yeah, it looks like some even over here closer to the road too.
So it looks like there's just two. So 6 of them are potentially over here.
Right. Okay. And I'm looking at some of these last names, and these are names that, you know, Neely, that's a Rowan County name as well, Weinkoff, you have Millers, Pfeiffers, Atkinsons, McGrees, Hedricks, of course Pfeiffers again, and there's a slab that's there as well. So, you know, they're being pretty consistent with the names, right? Yeah. And so these are the names. Individuals who passed, born as early as 1711. That's the most eldest, and that is Moses White. Wow. Okay. That's some pretty good documentation. Anything else that we need to know about the efforts that are happening here in Cabarrus County in telling history as a whole? I mean, obviously there's a lot of people moving to Cabarrus County. In Charlotte in general, the Charlotte region in general. And there's people that have been living in Charlotte most of their lives and they're moving out to outward, you know, as well. And so What is it that you all want viewers to know about the efforts that you all are putting in, and encouraging them to not only think about larger museums and historic sites, but also these smaller ones that you all are putting together?
You know, if it weren't for smaller organizations and smaller museums, a lot of the local store would go unheard. We lose a lot of history that way. You know, when you have natives and tourists alike that are asking questions about, well, what did Concord look like about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or trying to figure out what the results of certain decisions that were made within the city. Where did that start? Where was that established? And a lot of times we hold the stories to that. Um, but within Cabarrus County, I would say that there's been a lot of adaptive reuse. There are folks that are very passionate about preserving stories, if not the infrastructure, making sure that there's some type of signage, some type of storytelling associated with the site. We have a lot of folks that I mentioned earlier that are just very passionate about the local history and making sure that it's maintained in some shape or form. If they don't have it, they know where to go.
Yeah.
And my hope is that we, as Historic Affairs Association, will be be appointed as, go there if you
Yeah.
need to find out something about all things going on, history, preservation in the county.
Yeah, that's what's up. What about you, brother? And the work that you're doing?
My work is, of course, tied into what she's doing, but I want to make sure on a broader level that the stories of African Americans are told in full and in truth and inclusively. You know, it's just something that has been a passion of mine for a very long time. And so when you see these stories, you go to these museums, you want to make sure that you're getting the whole picture. You know, as far as Meadow View, it is a new project, a fairly new project. So having that, knowing that, it gives me a clean slate. So I don't have to start from somebody else's research.
Yeah.
Well, she has the basic research, but as far as interpretation goes, as far as like tours and the paneling and things like that, I could build off what research has been done, but I can also dig deep and try to understand the general research of what happened on a day-to-day basis in the school. And I think the smaller moments, like she was talking about, the bigger institutions, they tell the broader stories, but I believe the most valuable history, all history is valuable, but the most valuable portion of history is what happens in the smaller communities and areas, because that's what, in my personal opinion, changes things.
Yeah.
So
And it's more of an intimate feel as well.
Right.
And you
Right.
may feel as if
Correct.
you have a more vested interest in it just because of the intimacy that's connected to it.
Right, and then it's the community that you live in. You
Yeah.
know, if I go to DC to the big African American,
For everybody.
everybody go there. But if I come down here, this might resonate more with me because this is the community that I live in. I'm able to be palpable with it. I can go and say, I want to volunteer. I want to be a docent. I want to help research. You know what I'm saying? So that makes in fact makes history come alive to you, because that's what happened to me. I'm like, man, I've been to all these museums my whole life, but where I live, I have not seen or looked into the history of anything where I live. And that's what brought me to this conclusion that our stories are not told as broadly as they should. But of course, understand the climate of America now. Most African American history and Black history is being erased, and so this is another challenge. So yeah, that's basically it. Community buy-in, community help, community work.
And to that point, it's doubly important that we have the research like you mentioned, because we are giving the stories and the facts for all the natives and folks that live here to be the local storytellers.
Yeah.
If we're not able to do that, then we are giving them the history that they need to share it with the locals or people that are coming, just dropping by into Concord or Cabarrus County in general.
Yeah.
We have to be a source for them
Yeah.
to share the story.
This is true. Anywhere else we're going today, or does the buck stop here for now?
It stops here.
We're trying to get out this heat, y'all. But listen, this is, again, I try to get as much local history as possible as well when I don't have to drive 5 hours, 6 hours away or what have you. And so, and gas is high. So make sure you subscribe to this and you share it and consider becoming a member, because that does help. But this is another episode of History Before Us. And like you all know, if you've been following me for a while, I love unheralded history. I love little known history in smaller communities, because you know, it is very intimate. It makes you feel like you have a deeper connection to it because you do live close by or what have you, or you're familiar with surnames and things like that that you've seen around the city, whether they're street signs or just research that you may get when you go to the archives. And you're like, oh man, I've seen that name somewhere before locally. And so this is another shining example of what that can look like and what that does look like. So we definitely look forward to when Meadow View is put back together and the interpretation, the interpretive panels and everything are put out there for individuals to be able to digest, as well as we are definitely going to be looking forward to see how the formerly enslaved humans who are on the outside of the encapsulated enclosure for the Pfeiffer Cemetery is identified and how those folks are honored. So again, if you like this type of history, please make sure to subscribe and share, and I greatly appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Peace.